So, Rick, if you couldn't paint or you couldn't fish, which would you pick?
Yeah.
Which would be more painful?
Come on. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you have to pick one.
My form of fishing is probably not what you're thinking of. My form of fishing is very physical.
This is another podcast, Rick. So you can't choose, Rick. You can't. You literally.
I don't know if I could. Don't make me choose, is what I'm saying.
It's time for another episode of Charbroiled Chats.
Grace, you know how podcasters are always starting out episodes and they're saying, like, I'm so excited today. I'm thrilled because we're talking to a very special guest. Well, I'm not.
You're not what?
I'm not thrilled. Here's why. Rick is one of the smartest, funniest, nicest, coolest people I've ever met. But I haven't talked to Rick in like forever. So I'm not excited. I'm sad. See what I'm saying?
Not really.
Actually, get this. The last time I talked to Rick, you know when that was?
World War One?
1927. And you know what we talked about? Lucky Lindy.
Okay, well, Rick's going to talk about his life as a painter and what it takes day to day to really commit to doing something like that. So let's talk to Rick now and maybe you'll feel a little better.
Maybe.
I'm just curious, you have a website, Rick? I would like to see what you're working on these days.
Oh, yeah, I've got Richard C. Harrington is my main website. And then it started out as a joke, but I have the South Lima Steelhead Society, which is kind of the fishing-related version of Richard C. Harrington, which has grown into that hosts the River Rambler, our podcast and stuff.
Did you used to do pastels?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
When I was illustrating, I did pastel.
Wow, the abstracts, the colors are. So what are you using now? Is this
Oil
acrylic?
and acrylic. It depends on
Oil and
the
acrylic.
animals, and the abstracts are acrylic.
Uh-huh.
Some of the animals have oil too, and then the landscape and the barn paintings are oil.
Oh, that rhino is cool. Wow, I'm sorry, I'm just looking through all of it. Wow, that's a really cool technique that, it looks like it's all blotted.
In almost everything I do, I paint with tools that keep me from being able to draw. Because let loose, I will just render the shit out of stuff.
Oh, and you don't want to do that.
I feel like once you really learn to draw, then you're that. After a while, I wanted more out of it.
The barns are so cool. I mean, so those are, I was looking at one, it said 40 by 30. Oh, that's 66 by 48. Wow. I just love,
Thanks.
How you represent light and everything, light and shadow. It's
Well,
so
that's
cool.
what the barns are kind of, when I saw Mark Rothko's work, I don't know if you're familiar with Rothko's work. I saw it in an art history book in college, and I thought, what the hell is that crap? And then when I worked at Buck and Plain, I got sent to New York, and I had about a half hour, and I had my Buck and Plain expense account. And so I said to the cab driver, wait for me. And I went into the Guggenheim to see it at a trot. And I come around a corner, and I come into a room full of floor-to-ceiling Rothkos.
Yeah, they're huge.
I had no idea they were massive. It was a purely emotional experience. I almost wept. It took me years to find abstraction in my own work, but I think when I first saw Mark Rothko, at some point that's when I didn't think I was going to be an artist. I thought I was going to paint and have another job.
Now, were you, up until this point, you were working in commercial art? And had you been painting before that for your own?
Oh, I'd been painting all the time. I just thought painting was going to be a hobby. I was taking portrait painting at night at the Memorial Art Gallery from Peter Berg. And Peter Berg was
I remember that name.
He was an amazing painter and a wonderful teacher. I was late all the time anyway. That's just my whole life. I have a very difficult relationship with time. I get into Peter's class late. It's about the third time I've taken it. I'm embarrassed. He's got a group of people that are his just core students. And I'm obviously an interloper because I've only been there for three classes. And these guys have taken his class for like 10 times in a row. And probably within 10 minutes, I'm asleep.
Oh my God.
But what I do is I start to fall off the stool. And that's what wakes me up. And I grab the stool and I sit upright, and it's just enough to not tip me over, but I tip and I clunk and I clunk, 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 and I start clunking around in a circle. Everyone in the class is looking at me. Peter's looking over his shoulder at me, and he just shakes his head and graciously goes back to drawing. 5 minutes later, he says, "Let's take a break." And so all these people file out past me, and I'm just mortified. And I hear people hissing at me, "You don't deserve to be here. You should just drop out and leave."
Kidding
and
me.
It was just more. Oh, it was embarrassing as hell.
Still.
And Peter comes back, and he's standing next to me, and he says, "So Rick, why are you so tired?" And I said, "Peter, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have come tonight." And he goes, No. You're always welcome." And I said, "Well, I have 2 little kids, and my wife's got some health problems, and I work some kind of crazy hours." And he goes, "Oh, these other people here, they're all pissed off at you. They're my core. I love them to death. Pretty much do the same thing they've done since they started with me. And I feel like I'm teaching you. I can't believe what I'm learning from you." And he says, "Well, just keep doing it. Just keep coming. Try to stay awake."
Oh, jeez.
And he was wonderful. He asked me a couple years later why I was studying portrait painting. I didn't seem to be inclined to flatter people. And I say, "Well, Peter, in the family I grew up in, we don't flatter so much, we mock."
Oh, jeez.
And he goes, "Well, the basis of portraiture is flattery." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm not going to be a portrait painter." And he said, "Well, why are you taking this class?" I said, I'm learning so much about painting. It's incredible." He was a wonderful teacher, super interesting guy. He passed away way too young.
So you were always late and falling asleep, and that made you think, I can be an artist?
No, I loved painting. I just wanted to paint as a hobby.
And when did that start? Was that a high school?
Oh, from a little kid.
A little kid, okay.
I kind of started drawing and fishing at the same time. My folks, I'm one of 7, and my mom has always laughed that if she could give me a pencil and paper, she didn't have to worry about me doing anything else. Mm-hmm. My loves in life as a kid were drawing, fishing, and baseball.
Wow.
And my brother and my other siblings. I'm a person of simple needs. But, I started working a job when I was in 5th grade.
Were you making garments in a sweatshop? Wait, what were you doing?
I was picking vegetables with migrant workers.
Oh, okay.
We used to ride our bikes about 5 miles out to the fields where we picked.
Oh.
The first day home, we'd been out in these muddy fields I think we left for the fields at about 5. Had to be out there at 6.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And the first day we cried all the way home and tried to quit. And my mom laughed at us. And we had to go back the next day.
Why were you doing it? Why, your parents just thought it would be good for you to...
My folks grew up in the Depression. You had to have a job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we had to save half our money.
You know what's weird, though? My parents grew up in the Depression, too, but for some reason, my father never wanted us to work. I don't know why. It's weird.
In my family, we mostly fit fun in around working. And so we'd go on this one big, colossal family vacation every year, and then we would do Sunday picnics. But outside of that, I couldn't go to Little League practice if my jobs weren't done. So I'm still, I tend to work too much. I wish I had a better leisure mind.
Yeah, you were trained to do that, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm hardwired to work. That would be the one criticism I would have of my parents, that work was too much a priority. I think there should have been more about having a balanced life. And I had one period where I attained a balanced life. A bunch of stuff happened right at 30. I finally got a raise to where I was making enough money. I didn't have to freelance. By then made me realize I needed to quit my job because my dad was never home and I wanted to be home with my kids.
Yeah.
I got launched as a freelance illustrator because I went to school for business. I knew how to draw and paint, and I'm a smartass. And I knew all these people from advertising, so I had the contacts to make it as a freelance illustrator. And that worked great for about 8 years. I made a decent living.
You were making money doing art?
Doing freelance illustration. I was still painting, but that was just a hobby.
Okay.
I never even showed it. I was too embarrassed about my work. If you put an art director with a job and me in a room with 100 illustrators, I would laugh and say, "See you guys, that's mine." Because I'm a smartass. I was really comfortable. I've got a good sense of humor. I have a business background. I went to school for business. I understand the concepts of business. And this is business to business advertising. I can solve that problem for you. And with painting, It was about taking all those things I love to do and figuring about what that meant to me. And that really gets down to the core of who you are. And at my core, if you put the smartass out of it, I'm actually really shy. And so I actually just never showed my work. And I was perfectly happy with that.
Was there a point where you said, I have to do my own painting and make a living at it?
Only because I had to, because the internet launched. I went out of business. It took me probably 2 years to realize it. I went from $65,000 a year to 12.
So what's the connection with the internet? Is that anyone could get any job or
the digital transfer of images?
Yeah.
People had come up with the idea a few years before. If you sold an illustration outright, the company that owned it bought it.
A single use, right?
What they bought it for.
Yeah.
What if you only sold them the rights for an annual report,
Mm-hmm.
and you retained the rights for magazines, whatever else you could possibly use it for?
Yeah.
And the problem was, I can still remember thinking, how is this going to be practical? Like, I don't know if you remember when you used to ask for stock photography.
Mm-hmm.
You'd get on the phone and you'd talk to a stock house.
Yeah.
And they would send you overnight a fat envelope full of slides.
Yeah, right.
The most impractical thing. And it's still, they made a business of it. But as soon as they figured out how to do that digitally,
Yeah.
boom, it destroyed it.
Huh.
I did little jobs from $200 to $400 doing little spot illustrations, 6, 8, 10 of those every month.
Yeah.
And then every 2-3 months, you'd get a $5,000 or $10,000 job.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the year, you had a great life.
Yeah.
And the internet came along, and 2 years I was toast. The other problem was at that same time, Bausch & Lomb was crashing, Kodak was crashing, Xerox was crashing. I mean, digital kind of bumped everybody.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the only guy looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person who came along then is my dear friend Catherine Gallant, because she is one of my favorite people in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
She is, I think, the most individually powerful person I know, and one of the kindest. She said to me one day out of the blue, when are you going to be ready to have a show? And I said, well, I'm just trying to make some money. And she said, are you? And I said, no. And Catherine said, how many paintings you got? 35. And she said, call this woman. She says she runs the gallery at the Unitarian Church. I'd shown at 2 galleries in Rochester over like the first 10 years I got out of school, and they'd both gone out of business.
That was your fault.
Well, thanks, my Catholic coming up. I think everything's my fault. Walt's not even talking.
I know.
No, I'm just listening.
He's just going to come in with his sniper.
Walt is asleep.
I'm waiting for the Rothko epiphany to turn into the point where you suddenly realized you had to paint. I'm making the movie out of this.
I'll get there.
But there's so much.
I'm coming, Walt. So
we've got a 260-page screenplay at this point.
How many do you need for a screenplay?
90.
120.
I thought like 10. So she sets me up with a show at the Unitarian Church. At the galleries I used to show with in Rochester, I think I sold 8 paintings total. I just have no faith that I can sell paintings. I don't know what to expect. I set this show up at the Unitarian Church. My kids and I are sitting out there waiting. All of a sudden the service ends. I've brought some food, and the doors open, and there's just this insane feeding frenzy. All the people leave. My kids are angry and bitter, and I don't know what to say. And the woman, the manager, comes out and says, well, we close the church now. You have to leave. And so I left. And then over the next 2 weeks, I think I sold like 6 pieces. There was nothing big. I mean, I probably made I don't think I even made enough to sell the framing.
Wow, that's great.
But that year, at the Clothesline Arts Festival, my neighbor of 3 years said, Rick, why do you do this show? I can't figure out why you're here. He was making lawn ornaments out of plumbing pipe and making about $6,000 a day. And I said, Steve, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to declare bankruptcy and be a carpenter.
Wow.
And he just looked at me dumbfounded. He says, where else do you go? And I said, Steve, I've been doing this for 3 years. I've never sold a painting. I just sold like 8 pieces of the Unitarian Church, but I didn't actually cover my framing bill. And I don't know what to do. Why would I go anyplace? And he said, don't you know, this is the worst art market in the whole country. And I said, no. No, Rochester's a great art market. He says, no, they're not.
Oh, is that true?
So where do you go? And he says, we got to go to Florida, the Midwest. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate Florida. I said, Steve, I'm literally so desperate financially now. I could have qualified by light years for bankruptcy, but if I go bankrupt, I can't get my kids through college. I said, Steve, tell me what to do. And he says, okay, here's 4 shows. Apply to these shows. I get their prospectus. I put my applications in. I get into 3 out of 4 shows. So I go to 2 street shows in Florida. I'm going to stay with my in-laws. I have no idea what to expect. I've got mostly pastels and monotypes, a couple of small oils. I make $3,500 the first weekend. I go do another show and I make $4,500. It takes me like 10 minutes to kick into my business mode and think, wait a minute, if I do 10 shows, I could make $40,000. It's probably going to cost me 10 grand to make, so I need to make 15 shows. I can make a living doing it.
Why though? I mean, I can sort of see Florida, but why the Midwest? I mean, did you ever find out why they're really good markets?
There's a season almost all year. You just have to go all over the country.
Yeah, and the thing is with shows, I mean, isn't there a season for shows too? So maybe you still have time.
No, that turned into windshield time.
Okay. Well, I was thinking that maybe you would still, have those big stretches of time where you could still do whatever you wanted.
That summer, the show I'd applied to.
Yeah, so when was that?
That would have been the year I turned 40.
I don't know how old you are, Rick. So
I'm 62.
Okay.
So some other things that happened, I am trying to figure out what to do. I'd applied for a grant that year, and I got a grant to paddle the Genesee River from Pennsylvania to the Great Lakes and do a sketchbook about it. All this time, I was still working for my friend Paul. And Paul, the saint that he is, the great friend that he is, the paddling buddy that he is, he was making room for all this stuff. So I'd say, Paul, I'm going to go to Florida for like 2 weeks. I got to drive down, do these 2 shows, and I'll come back. Sorry, I'd leave you in a lurch. He'd be like, don't worry, I'll call somebody else in to help out. And so I'd go like a madman, do these shows, eat like a king, drive home, get back to contracting. I do this trip down the Genesee, and I realize I hate my work. What the hell am I doing? I did this show in Ann Arbor. I'm set up across from Lawrence Mathis. He's a painter from Georgia. And it's obvious I don't know what I'm doing. He and made it just take me to dinner every night. And the first thing Lawrence says is, so what are you doing? I tell him, he goes, how much do you make? And I'm like, 30,000? He's like, what? And I said, do you mind telling me what you make? And he goes,
it's got to be over 100K, right?
He's doing, I didn't want to say, because he's doing really well. And I said, you work all the time? He goes, no, it's kind of embarrassing. I don't work that much. And now part of the thing is Lawrence is a magician. Lawrence can just churn paintings out. I make everything hard, but that's just my own nature. If someone puts their effort into it, it's art. Mindset you get into when you paint is the value of art for the artist. The level of concentration it requires and the length of time it requires you to do it. There is a level of mindfulness that it doesn't matter what kind of crap you turn out, it is worth being in.
Well, it's interesting though, Walt, this kind of reminds me of the conversation that we had about music, that like professional musicians listen to music differently than people who are music fans, and it's, I guess I would agree with your son that if someone makes it, it's art.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's the act of making is what's important.
Well, I guess the thing is, I guess why I connected it with that conversation that we had about music was that different people do things for different reasons. You do that for that reason, to be in that space. Other people might do it because they just love putting color on a canvas. Other people might do it because they actually like how it feels to have their hands doing something. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
so yeah, there's different, and we were talking about music, just that, my friend's husband is a musician and my brother's a musician, and they listen to music to hear like, okay, how are they doing this? How does this sound? What is the, what's the chord progression? Whereas, I listen to it to, for ecstasy. So.
Well, it's funny. I love the music conversation, and I will right off say, I'm in the Walt camp. I'm so
good for you, Rick.
Frustrated with my lack of.
Good for you.
A kindred spirit.
I enjoy listening to music. If music is on, I can't work.
Well, I can't either.
With the one exception that I absolutely don't understand, I can work to Mozart.
Yeah, I can't listen to music at all if I'm trying to concentrate on something.
I'm immediately distracted by it.
So
back to where Lawrence Mathis convinced me I needed to paint. I went home, started applying for winter shows, and I lined up 6 shows in Florida, 9 shows all over the country for the rest of the year. I worked for Hount. I painted about another 50 hours a week.
Yeah, I was going to say you would need a lot of work to take with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lawrence had told me, quit doing pastel. You're going to make more money painting. Quit doing printmaking. You're going to make more money painting. And he says, you must sketch these out. And I said, yeah, I do. I just do little watercolors. And he says, quit, sketch them in oils because you can sell small oils for more than you can sell a large pastel. And the thing I said was, well, I'd rather do oil anyway, because I had started painting oil because pastel is really fun up to like a 16 by 20. And then to me, it gets to be a really frustrating size as a tool to cover an area. Where with an oil, you just get a bigger brush or a bigger tool. You mix up more paint and get a bigger applicator. So I just dove in. I took off for Florida, lined up to stay with my in-laws. I took a canoe and a kayak on top, like in Naples area, and I'd go to the Everglades in between and camp for 4 days. My first show, I didn't have enough money to get home. I didn't have enough money to pay the rent, the utilities. I was a basket case. And to me, it's kind of like running whitewater, because if you're at a show and somebody's a basket case, you might as well be a serial killer in your booth. Nobody is going to come in your booth.
Oh my God.
So you got to sit there and chill out and get as loose as you are when you're so scared you're a little wooden boy at the top of a rapid, and you've got to find your fluid self so you can run that rapid without getting your face wet. My buddy Coop used to tease me and say, follow the true path, my son, through a rapid, because what that meant was if you are on the true path through that monster class 4 or 5, you can run it and not get your face wet. And I would sit before the show started in my booth, which I now had walls for. I'd be all set up, and I would just sit there and think about being in the water, think about being with my kids, think about being mellow. This family comes along, happy adult pair with 3 kids, 2 in strollers. 10 minutes in, they say, we'll take these 3.
Wow.
And I about fainted.
Nice.
This other couple is a couple with an adult woman is standing there. And the woman says, damn it. And I said, what? And she said, I wanted that one they bought.
Ah.
And I said, do you mind watching my booth for a minute? I have another one in my van. It's not the same, but it's got some of the same color. And so I came back. She bought that and another one. And I was just standing there staggered. I said to my neighbor, do you mind watching my booth? She said, no, you're having a good show. And I said, I am. This is the best show I've ever had in my life. And I went back to my booth, and I come back, and the husband from the family is there. And he said, they look great. We need another one. We'll take that one. And he bought a bigger piece. And I think at that show I made $7,500.
Is it like economically these places are better off? Or what's the scoop?
I think there's a tradition of buying art.
More of a culture of it.
There's a culture of supporting the arts.
Yeah. Why is that not true? And is this so Western New York in general? Why is that true?
I'll trash Western New York on this front. I love the Oxford Gallery. He repped me when I was there. I think he still has one of my pieces. He's a wonderful guy. He's busted his ass to make a living in Western New York.
Mm-hmm.
I think total, the whole time I was in Western New York, with what I sold through him, through the Unitarian Church show, I might have sold 12 pieces. At this point in my career, I'm north of 900.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I lived in New York for 20 years of that. I just quit even trying. I think there's a serious bias. If you were serious, you'd live in New York City. What are you doing here? You must be cheap.
Oh, that's interesting.
And by then I'd found out what I could get for my work. I can't afford, at the price you can get for a painting in New York, I can't support a family. I can't get my kids through college. So I did for all my fun life, turned into driving around the country. I made a living, but it wasn't fun.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The upside is, because I am social, I have a whole group of friends now that are artists that I know all over the country. But if people want to get too wrapped up in the glamorous artist life, I spent 10 years sleeping in rest areas in my van. Well, I finally got to the point where things were looking good. Some of the pressure was off because the heat of getting my girls through school. I was still just barely breaking even, Right then, the housing collapse. I went off another cliff. I actually survived on my mailing list selling little paintings on eBay for about a year.
Wow.
And again, realizing my art market's over. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm paying my bills by churning out these little paintings. And I thought, what the hell? I'm going to paint bigger. So I did one big painting of a barn. And I went to a show with one 4 by 6 foot painting. And a guy came by and he said, got any more of that size? And I said, well, no. And he said, oh, I'm looking for a big piece, but I don't like those colors. And I thought, shit, he didn't even care what it was. But I learned a lesson. Don't go with one.
Yeah.
So the next show I went to, I bought a double booth. I showed up with 5 big paintings. And I had the first time I had a really good show. And I was doing these big barn paintings. My landscapes at the time were up to about 3 by 4 feet. I guess I would say they're kind of more like Rothko applied to the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be Rothko, but Rothko's always Rothko.
Right.
I don't want to mimic. I thought, why do I paint? I paint really because it's a reflection of my love of land and landscape and the experience I have outside. And it occurred to me, with what's going on with global warming and with so many people being disconnected from the environment, what if I could use landscape the same way and make a landscape big enough that when you stood in front of it, it was like a Rothko painting?
That's a neat idea.
And then I proceeded to just bury myself in just cranking out little eBay paintings, doing these giant barn paintings that all of a sudden I started selling.
So where are you now? What's the situation with your painting?
I started making a living again with the big barn paintings. It was going to be the perfect mix of I could do the barn paintings to survive. Well, I tried to figure out how to break into another layer of the art world. Then I got sick.
Right.
I don't know really what happened with the art market. The middle part of my art market disappeared. I got to the point where I could sell big barn paintings or nothing. I didn't sell any small landscape paintings anymore. And then after I got sick, I couldn't do a decent landscape painting to sell. I lost something in my mind that allowed me to carry the information of the 3-dimensional space of a landscape.
Wow.
And I got to the point where I could barely do a barn painting. But fortunately, I could do enough of those to just barely squeak by. Then about 2 years ago, while I was eating breakfast one morning, my mind lit up. And I don't want to say I was like vegetable boy, because I was still doing stuff. I was great life with my dogs, great life with my kids, but I wasn't productive. And all of a sudden I was plugged in and I pulled out a sketchbook and I'd been trying to figure out how to paint animals, well, since I was probably 5. And something happened. What I'm really kind of interested in is kind of a primitive mind. Like if I could be the same mindset of the people who painted on the caves in Lascaux. But those drawings turn out to be incredibly sophisticated. In fact, some of them are animation by firelight. The flicker of firelight makes those things move.
Right.
But what is that mind that has evolved, 60,000 years and stood dwarfed by Richard Serra's work, Mark Rothko's work, and then how do I make that mine? So now I have a body of abstract work that came out of me doing Instagram on macro photography of the natural world. I have my body of barn paintings that I do make a living with, but I'm also really excited about. And in fact, I'm getting ready to propose a museum show about that.
And what's your access to the market now? How are you selling now?
I have one show that I do in Crested Butte. Crested Butte has been my lifeline while I was sick. I have so many good clients out of there that while I was sick and only producing 10 or 12 paintings a year, those people bought them. In the same time, my gallerists Rick and Holly Armstrong at Rare Gallery in Jackson Hole, I've been with them just for like 12 years now, since the crash. I show with Bev's Fine Art in Raleigh, who showed me when nobody else would. I show at Summit Gallery in Park City. She is like having one of my daughters as a gallerist. She not only fit in as a third daughter, age and spunk-wise, my daughters are just dynamos, and so is Megan there. And then I show at Xanadu Gallery in Scottsdale. And the thing is, this next body of work I want to do, I'm determined to get my mind around my landscape, because I have a body of work that is going to dwarf what I'm doing now. I'm not sure I can do it, but I'm going to find my way back to it.
Great.
Hey, what about fly fishing? What's the deal with that?
That's as long as this is.
It's well said to me, like bone up on fly fishing.
I was completely prepared just to do fishing.
So it's not just fly fishing, it's fishing in general.
No, it's just fly fishing.
Just fly fishing. Okay.
So I think we need to do an episode 2, Rick, on fishing.
I've obviously proved I'm willing to talk your ears off.
Yeah, Bailey warned us that it would be, a minefield.
You already knew that before.
Yeah.
I love to visit.
As far as painting, is that a job for you, or are you somebody who is driven to do?
You got to have a passion. It's that total absorption. I make a living painting. I need to paint like in rehab right now, I'm about 3 weeks out. I'm getting itchy. I get kind of untethered. I need to make something. But I love to paint.
I mean, that's sort of why we started the podcast, I think, because
You want something that's a passion.
Well, for me, had started thinking about writing again. I mean, because I write for work, but doing my own stuff like a blog or something. And I think, well, weren't you sort of at the same spot where you wanted to do something?
Right.
You wanted to start making something, and it's like in general, I sew a lot, and sometimes you just want to be making something, and
Yeah, if I wake up in the morning and I don't have a project, then I feel bad. I feel depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that too. What's the evolutionary basis for the reasons we do the things that we want to do? There's always like some evolutionary basis for it,
Right.
I think survival, and for me, the thing would be tool making.
Yeah.
So Rick, if you couldn't paint or you couldn't fish, which would you pick? Which would be more painful?
Come on, no.
Yeah.
Don't make me choose is
you
what I'm
have to pick
saying.
one.
I can see getting to a point where I'm not physically able to fish, because my form of fishing is probably not what you're thinking.
Spear fishing.
My form of fishing is very physical.
Spear fishing.
Spear? Oh, I let almost everything go, or I would be interested in spear fishing.
This is another podcast, Rick.
I think that's the button, don't you?
So Grace's cooking was getting her, my bladder's getting her.
Okay.
But
The button. I'm going to stop the recording for Zoom. Is that okay, Walt?
Yep, let's stop recording.
Okay, so stop the recording. Let's I'd love to talk fishing if you guys want to.
Another episode of Charbroiled Chats comes to a close. But rest assured, whatever you would like to talk about, we are listening. So go ahead, tweet us at @charbroilc or email us at charbroiledchats@gmail.com. Of course, we'd love it if you'd head over to iTunes or YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and write a review of Charbroiled Chats. And please, subscribe, like, follow, comment, and most of all, tell all your friends about Charbroiled Chats. See you next time.
But let's talk. Let's I told you that my son, when I had to tell him that I'd done it over 3 hour one.